Coming up, residents fall ill after a woman is suspected of administering a noxious substance at a sheltered housing complex.
It's time now on ITV for the news where you are, ahead of the national and international headlines in 30 minutes.
Welcome to ITV News Central. On our programme tonight, a man demands a judge give him the death sentence as he's jailed for life for strangling his wife.
We hope she can now rest in peace knowing that she has been listened to and justice has been done.
The bodybuilder with bowel disease who's defied doctors to become a male model.
Francis, well on!
The Bake Off's back, but can the Midlands make another champion?
And petals with promise. Why weddings mean these fields are flourishing.
Good evening. First tonight, a member of staff at a sheltered housing complex in West Bromwich has been arrested after some of the residents were taken ill. She's suspected of administering a noxious substance.
Some of the staff have also fallen sick with what we're told are food poisoning-like symptoms. The woman has been bailed pending a mental health assessment. Callum Watkinson sent this report.
This is Goldfield Court in West Bromwich. It is described by the company that owns it, Housing and Care 21, as extra care living for older people. There are 93 separate flats here and it's run in partnership with Sandwell Borough Council. The 23-year-old female member of staff was arrested on suspicion of administering a noxious substance after several of her colleagues and residents here were taken ill with food poisoning-like symptoms. She has now been bailed and taken to a secure facility pending a mental health assessment. Housing and Care 21 confirmed that she has been suspended from her job. Sandwell Borough Council say they won't be saying anything about this. They referred us to West Midlands Police, who confirmed that an investigation is going on. Part of that investigation will include further examination of the people who've been taken ill, and some of the residents here today on the gate have told us that some of their food has been seized for further tests. West Midlands Police are also asking anyone who can help them with that investigation to contact them.
That's Callum Watkinson reporting. There were dramatic scenes in court as a grandfather was sentenced to life for killing his former wife. Daniel Spencer beat and strangled Jane Wiggett at her home in Cheltenham.
He then hid her body inside her bed, where it remained undetected for weeks. During today's sentencing, Spencer repeatedly shouted at the judge, asking him, "Why don't you just give me a death sentence?" Ellie Louise Rindge reports.
This was Danny Spencer and Jane Wiggett shopping together last year. Although divorced, the couple was on good terms. But days later, Jane would be dead. Her former husband, having strangled her, would be desperately trying to cover his tracks, lying to her family and the police.
She's supposed to be phoning me tonight at about 10 o'clock.
Where is she?
In Penzance.
She's in Penzance.
If you do me a contact number, obviously when she phones me, I'll get her to phone you. How's that?
That would be wonderful. Yeah. And why is it that she's not speaking to everybody else?
I don't really know.
But he did know, and his lies were about to be uncovered. Danny Spencer had strangled his former wife at her flat and hidden her body in her bed. 2 days later, her worried family went looking for her, but her body was so well hidden they didn't see her. Spencer was caught on camera driving her car. He would later sell it for £2,500. By the time police finally discovered Jane's body, Spencer had disappeared.
We know that he went up to a port up in the north where he may have had some contacts, and we know that finally he was arrested very near to Birmingham Airport. He had his passport with him, so that's the inference that he was trying to disappear from view.
But he failed, and after a 12-day trial, a jury found him guilty of Jane Wiggett's murder. As he sentenced him, the judge told Spencer, "You were bullying and controlling towards her. She could not live with you. She could not live wholly without you. She allowed you to be part of her life, something which would ultimately lead to her death."
Daniel Spencer was a very jealous man who was still obviously in love with his ex-wife after he divorced her. And eventually, something happened which he didn't like, which resulted in him strangling her. Now, this wasn't the first time he had strangled her. He had, we say, and she had complained about, been strangled in the past.
Today in court, Spencer was described as jealous and controlling. Before being led to the cell, Spencer repeatedly shouted at the judge, members of the court and at Ms Wiggett's family. Upon hearing that he'd spend at least the next 16 years in prison, he shouted, "It's a death sentence and these people are liars." But it was his lies that will haunt Jane Wiggett's family. They say they feel they let her down, taken in by the words of a man she used to love. Ellie Louise Ringe, ITV News, Bristol Crown Court.
In other news, a student from Derbyshire has been named as one of 2 British men stabbed to death in Malaysia. Neil Dalton and Aidan Brunger, who were both 22 and medical students at Newcastle University, were reportedly stabbed in Kuching town in the state of Sarawak. Local reports say it happened after an argument in a bar. 4 Malaysian suspects have been arrested and a knife has been recovered.
Police are appealing for witnesses after a 20-year-old man with learning difficulties was attacked at a park in Wolverhampton. The man was on his way home from college when he was approached by 2 teenage boys around 5:15 p.m. on Thursday in Northwood Park in Bushbury. They repeatedly punched and kicked him before setting fire to his bag, which contained all his coursework. He was left with a broken jaw and fractured eye socket.
A search has begun to find a 15-year-old girl from Hereford who's been missing for more than 2 days. Sarah Middleton was last seen leaving her home in Hunderton Avenue on Sunday afternoon. She's around 5'4" and slim, with purple shoulder-length hair normally worn in a bun.
Leicestershire police have begun a new campaign to crack down on the sale of so-called legal highs. The force says it's concerned youngsters are able to buy the products more easily at places like markets and car boot sales. Figures show the number of UK deaths linked to legal highs rose from 10 in 2009 to 68 in 2012. A former user told ITV News Central that people need to be aware of the dangers.
I had some and just had this awful effect on me. I couldn't walk. I felt that something severe was going to happen. It did quite frighten me, which the other Class A drugs that I used to use never really had that sort of impact on me.
When you buy a so-called legal high, you know, there's no kind of government testing of what's in there. You just don't know. You don't know what you're taking. But what we're saying is some of these do contain controlled drugs, some of them contain dangerous substances, and you need to be aware of that so that you can assess whether you take them or not.
Inspectors say a young offenders institution in Leicestershire is unsafe. A government report into Glen Parva found an increase in violence against both staff and prisoners and said there were direct links between bullying and self-harm. Almost half of the young men there said they felt unsafe.
High levels of violence and bullying, and that in turn was leading to a lot of self-harm and young men on suicide watch. There wasn't enough for them to do, so they were bored and idle a lot of the day, and a lot of the prison, the conditions were squalid and they were wearing very poor quality clothing. So it was a poor culture with a lot of violence.
This is an utterly dreadful report on Glen Parva. There are young men in there who are lying idle in their cells. There are some who are too frightened to come out of their cells. The levels of violence are extreme. And of course, 3 boys have taken their own lives in the last year or so. This is a prison that is failing the young people, the staff and the public.
Well, in a statement, the Ministry of Justice said the Governor launched an improvement plan prior to this unannounced visit and progress is being made. We are reviewing future arrangements for young adult offenders in light of wider concerns raised by the Inspectorate.
It's been a memorable day for hundreds of junior doctors. 234 were today introduced to hospital wards across the region. More than 8,000 newly qualified doctors have just started across the UK.
A career in medicine can be rewarding, but a new survey shows it can also have many challenges. The Medical Protection Society says more could be done for junior doctors to ensure they have enough support and better working conditions. Lauren Hall reports.
As a junior doctor, Georgie Mason is used to working long hours. Even when she's finished her shift, there's always some studying to do. As a career, she says it's very rewarding, but it can also be challenging, especially in the early days.
It was very nerve-wracking when I first started working in a hospital. You're just beginning and it's all new and can be quite scary at times.
She says she does get plenty of support and it does get easier. But at times, she wishes she could spend more time with her patients.
We always want to be able to provide the best care we can and do our best to do that. However, there are occasions where you're being required to be in several places in one go.
In a survey of over 1,000 junior doctors, more than half say they have concerns about the quality of care in their workplace. Nearly 3/4 say they don't have enough time with patients, despite the fact the vast majority regularly work over their contracted hours. On the positive side, 2/3 say they're excited about their future careers in medicine, although that does mean 1/3 are having doubts and may have even considered leaving the profession.
There was a significant proportion that were considering their options. However, very few of those have actually left. And I think that once people get over the initial sort of shock to the system, they will realise that a career in medicine is extremely rewarding, particularly as most people go into it to help people.
The Department of Health say almost all of them will stay in the profession. They say new doctors have a long and rigorous training process, adding they recently introduced better support for junior doctors, and that more than 95% go on to have long and rewarding careers. The Medical Protection Society hopes they do, and that's why they want more to be done to offer junior doctors the right support and working conditions. They say junior doctors deserve the best treatments, so they can offer the same to their patients. Lauren Hall, ITV News.
More than 130 lethal firearms have been handed in to West Midlands Police during the latest gun surrender. Rifles, sawn-off shotguns and antique pistols were among the items handed in to officers over the course of a fortnight. People were given the chance to hand in weapons without being prosecuted, and more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition were also seized. It comes after the maximum punishment for illegal gun possession was raised to life in prison.
Well, more of the day's news online, including more on the campaigners who've lost their latest legal challenge over the government's high-speed rail project, HS2. ITV.com/central for that and more.
You're watching ITV News Central, still to come on the programme. Reigning champion Frances Quinn on life after the Great British Bake Off.
And find out why everything at this farm is grown to throw away. I'll tell you more later.